Hey everyone, this is Mikedot. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I'm here with my bro Afromania. How you doing?
Yeah, no, I'm doing pretty good, man. Very, very good. How about yourself,
I'm
man?
okay.
Good. So, you know what? For today's podcast, it's going to be very interesting. So, we're going to really recap a lot of Nintendo Direct that happened this past week. A lot of interesting news has dropped from that, though. But before we go into it, there's a bit of a controversy situation with Black Myth Wukong and with China at the moment that has been circulating at the moment, and I know Mike Dot kind of got in his 2 points in though, but I'm actually kind of curious to that. But before we go into it, just remind our audience of what's the situation's happening with that.
Yeah. So basically, as some of you may or may not know, there was a report from Chinese news that one of the developers openly spoke out about DEI companies wanting to consult on their game for diversity and sensitivity. And apparently they were asked to pay like $7 million in consultation fees in order for them to work on their game with them. While I don't believe it's particularly was 7 million, maybe 7 million in yuan, perhaps probably not US dollars, because $7 million just for consultation is an absurd number, and I don't think that would be in American dollars. So just putting that out there. But anyway, yeah, 7 million was mentioned by one of the user on Twitter who broke the story named Pratt Nation, saying that DEI companies are very common in the US and Europe, and they are really doing everything they can to try to push themselves into every single gaming gaming group, every gaming developer scene, and apparently they rejected it. And this also comes off the heels of I believe a year-old IGN article that stated that there is a history of sexism within the game science dev studio, even though it's been revealed but later today, a few weeks ago, that the article was completely misguided and it was filled with a
lot of irregularities and
false translations
because of
and no citations. There was little to no citations
and no reference points of making that clear of it being true.
It was basically just a
fluff piece.
Yeah,
like a hit piece.
It was basically because it was mostly just a he said, she said kind of deal. There are no citations, and it's just people saw right through that. I read the article, I saw right through that. They even tried to implicate another company that I like, of a game that I like to play called Gunfire Reborn, saying the same thing, that that company had a history of sexism, but again, absolutely no proof of that. Which is sad because I do like that game, but they're doing just fine. And yeah, ever since that happened, the game Black Myth Wukong has shot up in the rankings on Steam, is now one of the most wishlisted games of all time. That was before the other wishlisted game before we found out was a big scam the day before, if y'all remember that. But yeah, this game is legitimately high up there as a wish list as the game. And I believe it's in the top 10 of most pre-ordered games at the moment. But yeah, ever since that news came out, people have been rallying behind this game. Mostly personally because I think it's a really cool game, and I'm looking forward to it for its actual gameplay, not because of a culture war thing or whatnot. But anyway, that's basically the long and short of it. So, as you mentioned, Afro wanted something to say on this issue.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you in the whole situation, because I was going to go at it in a completely different way, but now I'm listening into more, and even me doing a little bit more of my research in the whole situation. Yeah, I think. I just think right now, in terms of these, first of all, I've always mentioned these consultant groups, I think, are just kind of pointless at the moment, because a lot of, and I feel like the only reason why these consultant groups exist is, for one, because a lot of these companies do not want to do any of the groundwork or want to take care of any of the responsibility of putting in their own teams to be able to fix their own culture issues. So they go out of the way to hire these, I won't say, I'm not going to say they're bogus consultant groups. They go out and hire a consultant group to come in to handle the problems that they don't want to handle, and then they come and make these changes, and then God forbid if things don't work out, then these companies can go and blame these consultant groups for why things never work out. But in the case of this situation, it seems like this has become more of a new grifting scheme for a lot of these consultant groups to kind of pop up out of nowhere. Like you said, to be able to come in and say, hey, you need to be able to fit these certain metrics. We can help you fix these metrics so you can meet a certain quota, pretty much. And if the company does says, hey, we don't want it, it seems like, well, basically it seems to turn into a weird smear piece where basically, well, clearly they didn't want our help because they have issues of some kind of wrongdoing that kind of pops out of nowhere. But like I said, there's no evidence to prove that. Now, there hasn't been of cases where we have known of video game groups that have popped up that have done some bad things, but but because of, unfortunately, the crucible hunt that's currently happening right now in the gaming industry with these consulting groups, everything's kind of blurred in. So you can't really be able to separate any of the situation of the companies that have been doing this wrongdoing in the background or not, because everything's now kind of been grayed in the whole situation. I think in terms of, if, like I said, with the information that has been held true, I think it's terrible that like a lot of these games should not need to listen. If they feel like these consultant groups can somehow help them achieve something in their games, okay, go out and get it. But it really shouldn't be mandatory. Like, it really shouldn't be mandatory, and it shouldn't be rejected, because it seems like right now, I feel like a lot of these people that run in these groups, the only thing they know, like, they really just care about how much money they can get, and they can only care about how much they look presentable. Hey, look, we're making these culture changes and stuff like that. Even if you were to fix the problem, it seems like they would never be happy with it. With that kind of situation. Yeah,
because it's like because the problem has to persist, otherwise they don't make money.
Here's the problem. There's no problem. Sometimes you're just creating something out of nothing to say, here's imagining a problem that doesn't exist, and we have the cure to fix it.
Yeah, exactly.
Which you're kind of throwing people on there either to guilt trip them and to try to fix the problem, which never existed to begin with in certain situations.
Yeah, I would pretty much agree with that as well, because like, it's just really frustrating when this really never was an issue, especially with the whole quote unquote, like, we need diversity in games.
No.
And it just like I just want to point it out there again. We said this before several times in the past, that we have nothing wrong with having a diverse cast of characters in a video game. As a person that me and my bro grew up in the 90s, diversity was something that we never had to think about. It was just there. Like gaming, entertainment, it was just something that people did. Like, we added this stuff naturally into our games and our products and our shows and our movies and our books and whatever. It just feels like today with like a certain crowd of people seem to think that diversity in entertainment wasn't a thing until 2016 or whatnot. But really, it's always been there. And just today, people are starting to recognize patterns of why, when people are doing this that are not being sincere, they're pushing the diversity angle while not being sincere about it. I mean, look at games like Tekken and Street Fighter. Those games have been diverse since day freaking one, man. Like, they don't have to think about it, and nobody complains about whatever character gets added to the game, because the game has always been diverse. And it's just like, they've always been genuine about it. I mean,
no, it's been again, even games like Overwatch, even further, was big into introducing diversity, and nobody really cared because the characters were freaking cool. Like nobody even gave a crap about that.
Yeah.
Like again, it goes back. And I bring up the Crucible. You've read the book, The Crucible, or at least seen the movie about it, right? Basically, it's become a weird Crucible hunt where you got these certain people creating problems. It's basically a witch hunt, calling people that see witches, when it's not there to either push a weird agenda or to kind of keep some kind of credibility. And I think that's what's unfortunately happening in the game. I think it goes back to the Anna Cartesian days that we had back in the whole situation, where it seems like there seems to be not enough women sensitivity, or there was not enough women representation in games. However, there was there was a natural transition of more female representation in gaming going before that. And I think you have, unfortunately, like these grifters that just kind of ride on the coattails of the winds of something that was naturally happening. Maybe does it help push it up a little bit? I guess. But I think it unfortunately, if you just had let it naturally happen, I think you would have an okay, decent response to it, versus now all you just did is create a knee-jerk reaction, or it's just forced into it, and now it's giving people a bad light on, well, I don't want women being represented, I don't want black people being represented in my games and stuff like that, where you just simply just allow it to naturally happen. And I think that's unfortunately the problem that's being happening right now, and it's bad, and I think it hurts these stories, like games and stuff like that, not being represented.
Very much so, because like, again, like also trying to claim that like no one wants females in video games, and people only want them if they're super smoking hot. That is, like, again, that also isn't true. I mean, one of my favorite games, being like Mirror's Edge, had an Asian woman, and she wasn't like a bombshell. She was like a little slightly above average, and it was one of my favorite like games. And it was just had a really decent story, and had a believable story. It was really good. And it's just like
I do remember a couple of weeks ago we were talking about Southern of the Bayou game that was coming.
I know what the game you're talking about,
and the whole situation about this. Now, again, I don't know if certain consultant groups was that. I know there's a certain group that you're not big with that. But here's the thing: if there is a consultant group that works in this situation that helps maybe make that game better, okay, totally understand that. But when you're trying to force your grifting on other companies that don't need it, only to go back and say, hey, this is that's not cool. That's totally not cool in the whole situation. So that's really my only take on that. But just like you said, I think gamers and the natural people are now starting to take recognition of the bullshit that's now happening, and I think people are now are not going to represent it, because I think a lot of these groups have kind of now overshot their hand. And now that's kind of also slightly going one-on-one with some of the journalism that's kind of happening at the moment. So, I think we're getting to a point where, like I said, I think the pendulum is slowly starting to swing back into the middle of these games. So, I don't think... I think this stuff is going to start to die down real quick. In terms of Black Myth Wukong, again, this game took a while for it to come back, so I've lost a little bit of interest in the game. That's just generally me. I can only speak for myself about that. But, I hope the game is good. I personally hope that the game is good, and I hope the game is fun, and I hope that people, like you said, are buying the game because they're generally interested in the game, and not because you want to hopefully push for some weird cultural agenda shit like that. So that's my take on that.
It's hard. You can't really argue against that. I do believe that it is kind of a frustrating thing to see all this like counter pushback in a way, because like, again, it's not like I want diversity. Like, I don't want like black people or women to not be featured in video games. Obviously, I want the opposite of that, but it has to be genuine. You can't like force it into check a box. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of people are seeing, is that these characters are being pushed into check boxes.
Because it's the companies right now. They have to feel like they have to meet these quotas. They're going to push it in because right now, diversity is kind of a selling point and not something that should be naturally happening right now, which is very unfortunate. Like, it's actually doing more harm to what you thought you were accomplishing.
Because now we've gotten to this point where now, like, the quote-unquote anti-woke is just as belligerent as the quote-unquote woke crowd. Because now, like, as you mentioned, knee-jerk reactions all around. The moment they see a black character or a woman, they instantly think that it's woke. And that's also not what I want to see.
Or even worse, that it's attached to one of these consultant groups that decided to push it on the video game developers to begin with, when that's not happening.
Yeah, I would say so. And that's all. Another thing is that somebody mentioned this in the comment section of my last videos, saying that these consulting groups are just there to quote unquote tell people what's offensive or not, and if they don't really have that much sway, then why hire them in the first place?
And that's kind of what went back to a couple of the podcasts I mentioned. Consultant groups only have 5% of the video game decision making. Like, you really don't need to even consider any of their stuff. That's the whole point of bringing in the consultant group. But the fact that you have to pay $7 fee or
just to have them.
A lot of money just to tell you that, oh, you need more women here, or you need to have more things over there, is kind of ridiculous. Again, and that's why I don't really go after the consultant groups as much as like that. I really do go after the publishers themselves for being very lazy and allowing this to happen, but not trying to handle this stuff in-house. You know, it could have been a lot about to handle this in-house. Now, I heard that certain places are now trying to force a lot of these companies to get more of these groups in, and that, which the only reason of what I would think about that may have to do was probably, I guess, a tax write-off might play a big, probably some part of that into that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say just a tax write-off, also just straight up funding, just like funding investments due to ESG, funded by like BlackRock. If you've actually read into that kind of stuff, because they basically give you a score based on your environmental, social governance in your company.
At the end of the day, it's trying to get as much fun in it as you possibly can, as well as potential. Again, people in the comments below, you can give me more clarification on that. I might have to. I'll probably have to go read that more by myself. But like you said, it seems like you, Mikedot, you've done a lot of your research on that, on explaining that, though. But I feel like, at the end of the day, it's about a lot of these companies trying to get as much cash as they possibly can. So they're willing. So they'll deal with this fake nonsense, even though that doesn't really add any value, and it does more damage in the long run, only just to get a quick buck.
Very much. Yeah, very much so. I mean, we trailed off on the whole situation with Black Myth Wukong, but I do feel like this is something that absolutely needs to be said, because I do feel like the industry has gone awry from trying to make games for the customer, and instead make games to chase a number, to chase a score, to please investors and shareholders rather than, the end user, which is you and me. I think we need to get back to that. But anyway, to really wrap up this discussion regarding Black Myth Wukong and the extortion, I do believe that it has basically backfired. If all this regarding like Sweet Baby Inc. and DEI companies is true, because they did say like Sweet Baby Inc. The person who dropped the article, who posted on Twitter, dropped the message saying that it was Sweet Baby Inc. But I don't think there's any true confirmation about that, so I'm just gonna assume it was just some kind of DEI company. But whatever they were trying to do is pretty much backfired, considering the game Black Myth Wukong has become more popular than ever before, and you have like news outlets like IGN trying to run cover for these companies and saying that no, it's not happening, even though, like, again, pattern recognition is something that we all have and we're starting to notice these patterns. And so these IGN like hit pieces can only go so far now. I really do feel like this kind of like journalism is gonna be on its way out,
and it's starting to become very dishonest. And I think a lot of gamers are starting to sit down and pick up on that. Like you said, they're picking up, like you said, the pattern recognition, because it's nothing new. It's been happening for years, pretty much. It finds a way to reinvent itself, and now we're just going to that nether phase, like you said. Was it Carcesian days?
Anna. I can't even pronounce her name. Anna Sarkeesian.
Anna Sarkeesian. Sorry, I keep on messing up her name.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
But it's just kind of like the whole situation with that. I think we're just going through another decade, or we're just kind of going through that, but we now know the patterns about it. And I think just decent gamers are now starting to pick up on that.
Yeah. Anyway, going off from that topic to something a little bit more like, uplifting, the Nintendo Direct came and gone, and there was some pretty interesting announcements, starting with the whole like new Mario and Luigi game, the Mario and Luigi Brothership. It's a new entry into the RPG series, and
I apologize. I apologize to cut you off, but before we go into that, what do you think about the entire like Nintendo Direct, just in general?
I mean, overall, it's just fine. It's what I expected from a Nintendo Direct, which is like 90% of the games don't interest me, and then the other 20% are like, I'll consider it. But yeah, it's just like, I thought it was all right. I mean, again, the stuff I'm interested, it's just something. It's just there. I mean, again, starting off from the top, I was saying like the Mario and Luigi game looks pretty cool, even though I've never been big into the Mario Luigi RPG series, but I know a lot of friends who are saying that it's a very its own unique, fresh take on the Mario RPG style of gameplay between Paper Mario and the Super Mario RPG game. And so now we're getting another Mario RPG game, and so I feel like the Mario RPG fans are eating pretty well right now.
You know what? I just feel like in terms of just the Nintendo Directs in just general, and maybe this is just me projecting on Nintendo, I just feel like it just feels. I don't want to say boring, but I think it just feels safe. I just feel like now Nintendo Directs have been safe coming from Nintendo. Like it's like you just said, it's games that you don't really care about, but it's a game. It's almost like you're gonna get a Mario game, you're gonna get a Nintendo, you're gonna get a Zelda game, you're gonna get a Metro Prime game. Like you're basically at that point, or you're gonna get a Mario Party game, and it's like, well, it doesn't feel like there's much risk being taken at Nintendo at this juncture at the moment with these directs.
Well, for this direct,
or for new IPs in terms of games.
Yeah, I suppose. But for this direct in particular, this is basically this might be the last direct ever for the Nintendo Switch platform, because the Nintendo Switch successor is coming very, very soon. So they probably want to hold what special cards they have for that announcement coming up. And there's also the fact that they just I think it's just fine, because like they got announcements. It's what most people want. They just want they obviously want a new Mario game, a new Zelda, and all that stuff. And it's just what makes people happy, because a lot of the Nintendo fans are just in it for the Nintendo games. They're not really looking forward to third-party stuff.
And you're absolutely right, though. But I just feel like along with that, I feel like Nintendo was always one of the companies where you can at least count on them for taking some kind of risk or kind of bringing something new to the table. And I just feel like over the last maybe a couple of directs, a couple of years, Nintendo's just kind of played it a little bit safe. That's just kind of my observation with the company at the moment.
Yeah, I suppose so. But like a lot of companies are trying to play it safe right now.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah.
Because with the whole economic situation, like they have to. A lot of these companies are only banking on making sure that the product is a surefire hit and can't really take a lot of risk, which is sad. If you really want to see risk taking, you're basically only going to get that from the indie space right now. And even so, Nintendo does have their own indie showcases usually, so that if you want the more quirky, innovative games, that's basically where you're going to have to find them. So perhaps they might do another like Nintendo Indie Showcase soon. And if they do, they better announce Hollow Knight Silksong, because they've been waiting for years at this point. And Team Cherry has been holding on to that game for so long, and they are getting restless, man.
I gotcha.
Yeah, so anyway, going through some of the games that was announced and some of the updates to games that were revealed. Nintendo World Championship NES Edition is a pretty cool concept of having a basically basically the whole 90s like World Championship basically condensed into its own package, featuring a bunch of games that were never really actually featured in the whole Nintendo World Championship showcase, which I think is kind of cool that you have these time trials and you also have a battle royale mode to go with it. And I do feel like it is a fun experience for those who are just really old school with NES games and want to show off their competitive side to the world. As well as Nintendo Switch Sports is still getting updated, which is kind of crazy because I thought that game, they were dead and done with that game. Adding basketball it's a neat little update, but it's still far shy from what was offered in previous Nintendo Wii Sports games, because basically this isn't a continuation of the Wii Sports series. And adding just basketball seems like, it feels like a little bit too little too late. They really need to add everything that the other games had if they really want this like series to thrive. And yeah, I hope they continue adding stuff to it to eventually it gets to that point. But I feel like they're just kind of just like passively adding things to the game. I mean, it is what it is, I guess. But what else got announced? I'm actually a little surprised. I mean, this is a bit of a joke in the gaming space. Hello Kitty Island Adventure is actually a mobile game that's getting a Switch port. And funny enough, a lot of people were actually excited for this because one, it's basically Animal Crossing, but with a bunch of Sanrio characters, and because of a South Park meme that was around like years ago when South Park did its famous World of Warcraft episode. You had a character named Butters who wasn't playing World of Warcraft, and instead was playing Hello Kitty Island Adventure. So basically, this game is sort of a meta meme in and of itself.
I know that Hello Kitty has a pretty dedicated fan base, so
yeah, it does have, like, besides Hello Kitty, there's other Sanrio characters like that, like Agretsuko and stuff like that. That's appeals to more of a mature audience, and she's also in the game as well. To see that character in there was kind of weird, because again, like Agretsuko is more of a mature show. So to see that there, but it's nice that they included that Sanrio character. And just overall, again, it's if you like Animal Crossing, you'll most likely like this. And I'm sure Butters from South Park will like it too. So I'm glad for him that he finally got his game. And considering how bad World of Warcraft is doing, I wouldn't blame anyone for wanting to play this over. Yeah. But another game that's actually the most weird game that they revealed was the Funko Fusion game, which was basically Funko Pops, the action adventure game, and it features a bunch of licensed Funko Pops from like Chucky the knife murderer, and you have Scott Pilgrim, you have Five Nights at Freddy. And it's just like, what is this? Like, what the heck are y'all doing? It's just like the weirdest.
I mean, I guess it's not a bad idea to do that. I think it almost seems like they're going kind of in the Lego route, where they're able to kind of explore it, like a bit of a combination between Lego and Fortnite, in terms of being able to have all these licenses under the product, and to have Funko Pops have been kind of going down in popularity for a while now. So in terms of now, this is kind of their next step in trying to keep some interest alive, and knowing that they have their relationships with these licenses, this is the best way to do it.
Very much so. It's kind of funny considering that me and Afro went to like a vinyl toy like showcase many years ago. And from what we learned there is that the vinyl toy community absolutely hates Funko. They despise it because it really tried to make vinyl toys mainstream, and it's just like, and they believe the sooner that this dies out, the better, the vinyl toy industry. But moving on with some of the games, Metal Slug Attack Reloaded, again, another mobile game that's getting ported to the Switch. But as a tower defense game, it actually is kind of cool, like strategy tower defense. It does look cool. It uses the same sprites from the original game, so it retains the look and feel. And I mean, obviously probably has all the mobile stuff stripped out, so it's definitely going to be a more enjoyable game overall. But another game that's kind of weird, that feels like a bit of a throwback, is the Looney Tunes Wacky World of Sports. Because if you've ever remembered the Looney Tunes basketball game from the NES, it instantly reminded me of that, and so it's kind of cool to see that getting brought back in a way. Even though I feel like the visuals could use some work because there's like, they don't have like thick outlines for some reason, so they kind of look a little bit flat, and you really could use some little bit more texturing. I think the gameplay is all right, but again,
a little bit more contrast.
Yeah,
to kind of separate the characters. Yeah,
I think the
silhouettes.
Yeah, the visuals really could use an update. Oh, another game, the Ace Attorney Investigations Collection. I've actually played the Ace Attorney's Investigation Miles Edgeworth game, and it's actually pretty cool because it's not just like, you know, court like hearings and whatnot, like from the original like Ace Attorney games, because there's also a point and click aspect to the gameplay, so you have to explore like a little bit and just look around and find clues and stuff like that.
I thought that was always was the Ace Attorney games too. It was half like, it's almost like a
point and click adventure,
like a point and click, like almost Law and Order in this situation, where half of the game you're finding evidence, you're outside of the courtroom looking for evidence to build up your case when you have to go into the courtroom. You do that in the other Ace Attorney games, but in this one you actually control Miles directly as like an actual like character in a game world, whereas where in the original games you mostly just looking around from a first person, like aiming a camera around to look at the crime scene, and like this game where you actually play as Miles and you have to actually explore different spaces. So that's the big difference between the two games. But yeah, they've always been a niche, but again, as revealed from the Capcom like super election survey, there is a very big audience for this game series, so to see it get an updated port on the Switch is pretty cool. Another game that I thought was pretty cool, Just Dance 2025 coming right now to Nintendo Switch, man. Yes. Okay, move on.
I mean, yeah, it's another year, another Just Dance game. You can't have them, especially when it's on the Switch, because that's basically.
I was joking, man. Not that no one's looking.
I mean, some like statistically speaking, someone is.
Yeah, I understand.
But I get it. I mean, for the 5 people in the who's watching this, I'm glad you got another Just Dance game. I hope it's fun for you, because DDR ain't coming back, so. Dance Dance Revolution ain't coming back, so this is the best we got. But yeah, that's mostly all the games that I thought was pretty cool. But mostly there is one big game that actually, or rather a big game collection that got announced at the Nintendo Direct, and that is the Marvel vs. Capcom Arcade Classics Collection, and this was huge for a lot of fighting game fans. And moving on, basically, for the longest time, there has been a very big campaign to get Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on modern consoles, because it hasn't been re-released since I believe the Xbox 360 Xbox 360 era. It's been basically dormant for years. This is a basically a campaign that has been spearheaded by Maximilian Dood for several years, and the rest of the fighting game community basically came up to support that movement. And finally, now we have it. We have a full-on a near arcade perfect port of Marvel vs. Capcom 2 that's going to be on the Nintendo Switch, on the PS4, and on PC.
And that's along with all the other the rest of the Marvel vs. Capcom collection series.
And the Punisher.
And the Punisher, which is just a weird squeeze, and I really don't know why the Punisher was squeezed into that. You feel like that should have been in the beat 'em up collection.
Yes, it should. But I'm guessing they didn't get to put it in there because they didn't have all the
license issues. Probably, that makes sense. That probably does make sense. No, I think that's a really fun big deal. The fact that they were able to come in terms of Capcom and Disney again, were able to kind of work together and actually to kind of make this happen. Because like you said, licensing issues is always a big issue when you can't get these things going. So not only the fact that you're going to get you get all this collection under one roof, along with the fact that you're going to get online online play, and hopefully good robot connection, which is the big thing that I know about fighting games, along with some little bells and whistles to it. Now now you can see some frame rates and how to get better at the fighting game and stuff like that. And then hopefully setting up tournaments and matchmaking modes and stuff like that. No, I think that's fantastic. I think it is a big deal that it's going to happen. You also it comes back to, like you said, the two things. One, the fact that it does seem like Capcom, maybe it does seem like Capcom is trying to make an effort of trying to meet the demands of fans. Again, going back to that survey that was done. It's a lot of the things that they were mentioned that were happening are actually now seem like they're starting to come into fruition.
Yeah.
So go to Capcom on that. Also, it does seem to hopefully quietly open the doors to maybe another Marvel vs. Capcom game, maybe down the road. Granted, we did have the unfortunate Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite game, which was not the best, unfortunately. But, if something like this sells, and it sells well, you at least have an argument that you can come back to the table and revisit it again.
Very much so. It's unfortunate because, again, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite could have been a highly praised game, but the simple fact is that the visuals were not on point, and the characters weren't there. A lot of characters that people wanted, especially the X-Men era characters, were just not there. And
that was a tough time because of licensing issues.
With Fox and whatnot, basically.
Yeah.
Just they basically were actively trying to get rid of the X-Men, and basically in an interview saying that there were just quote unquote functions. They're just as long as we have similar characters with the same functions as that characters you like, the game will do fine. But obviously that is not the case.
No, they literally tried to replace the X-Men with the
MCU characters.
No, not even with the MCU characters. They were trying to even that too, and they were trying to play with the Immortals, with the Immortal characters and stuff like that too. The Inhumans. They tried to replace them with the Inhumans, and that didn't work because they thought they were the same similarities of characters, and nobody was buying the Inhumans. They could never make that work. So the fact that Disney came back and rebought back Fox, pretty much it. Now, hopefully, everything is quietly back in the same spot. It makes it a lot easier now that everything's under the same roof.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, anyway, I am glad that this is finally getting important. It's Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is a game that I have not touched in years. Last time I played it was basically the PS2 version, which apparently is the worst version out of all of them. And then the arguably best version being the Dreamcast version because
it was made for that system.
Yeah, it's the same hardware. Basically. The Naomi Dreamcast hardware. So, and even then, the Dreamcast version is not arcade perfect. But hopefully, this version is going to be as arcade perfect as possible. So that is something to look forward to. Probably no balance changes because people actually don't like the game being balanced. They like the brokenness. They like the over top.
Goofiness,
They like their
yeah.
They love how like broken it is, and it's entertaining to see all the broken nonsense.
Listen, I'm excited that we're going to get Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I'm a big Marvel superheroes kind of dude. I've always enjoyed playing Marvel superheroes too, and as well as X-Men versus Street Fighter, which was kind of the game that really caught my eye of combining two of those franchises together out of nowhere. It's like that's freaking crazy. And then later on went into Marvel vs. Capcom, and then and here we are with Marvel vs. Capcom 2, arguably still the best of the peak. It was the creme de la creme peak of crossover games.
Yeah, very much so. I am looking forward to it.
Yep.
Anyway, that's it for this episode. Tell us what you thought about all the topics that were discussed here today. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. I'm Mikedot with Afromania, and we are saying peace.
Take care.